Around you, their guard stands down without abandoning wisdom. Their voice returns to its truest register. Their body remembers that softness and strength are not contradictions. You are not the destination. You are the condition that makes arrival possible. You make them feel unhurried in a culture that is always late. Time behaves differently near you, not slower, exactly, but deeper. Minutes expand enough to hold nuance. She tells a story and discovers there is room for it to breathe. You do not snatch the narrative to make a point. You follow it to help it reveal one. She comes away feeling intelligent because you didn't interrupt her intelligence with your own. That feeling is addictive because it is rare. She seeks you again the way weary people seek shade. You also make them feel interesting without making them perform. Your questions are shaped by curiosity rather than strategy. They do not angle toward a win, they fan a flame. What did that teach you about yourself? Is not a line, it is a ladder. She climbs her answer and finds a view she didn't expect, and you stand there with her without claiming the view as your achievement. She leaves the conversation proud of the ground she covered, rather than dazzled by how clever you were. That pride is not ego, it is alignment, and alignment hums like a favorite key. She returns to where she can hear it again. You make them feel respected, without being managed. Respect, in your hands, is not silence dressed up as politeness. It is engagement that never turns invasive. You can disagree without recruiting an audience to your righteousness. You can concede without turning to vapor. You can hold a boundary without turning into a performance art piece. A feminine woman near you feels her dignity safe from both condescension and control. Safety that preserves voice is rare enough to feel like luxury. She craves it because luxury that repairs is virtue. You make them feel feminine without demanding fragility. When she is fierce, you don't shrink to make her comfortable. You rise to make her free. When she is soft, you don't harden to protect yourself from tenderness. You soften just enough to honor the gift. When she leads, you follow with grace that costs you nothing. When she rests, you lead with a competence that costs you sweat and none of your soul. The feeling she registers is not that she must be one thing, it is that she may be many, and you will meet each with an answering strength. Multiplicity, underwritten by trust, is intoxicating. You make them feel chosen without being captured. Attention from you is precise, not promiscuous. When you look at her, she feels the beam of it, not the scatter. When you compliment, you name the real, not the generic. When you invite, you specify a time, a place, a plan. You do not outsource logistics to her willingness. Chosen does not become chaste because you never place your worth on her acceptance. The equilibrium is rare. She feels clearly wanted and completely free. The body recognizes this as premium oxygen and asks for more breaths. You make them feel lighter without making light of what matters. Humor with you is not an escape hatch from depth. It is the handrail that makes depth less steep. She brings you a worry and leaves with the same facts, reordered by hope. Nothing was minimized, everything was properly sized. The sensation is physical. Shoulders lower, jaw unlocks, breath returns to the belly. Lightness that respects weight is a tonic. She will want that medicine again, not because she is weak, but because she is wise enough to enrich her environment with what heals her. You make them feel witnessed in the mundane. Grand gestures are fun, but daily awe is intimacy's true economy. You notice the way she organizes her keys, the cadence of her texts when she's tired, the way she narrates small victories as if she doesn't deserve applause for them. You reflect those back in small, accurate blessings. A coffee placed at her elbow exactly the way she likes it. A message at the hour you know her courage dips. A question about the project nobody else remembers she is building. This does not create dependency. It creates recognition. The craving that grows is not for your provision, but for the version of life that is more awake when you are in it. You make them feel peaceful in their bodies. Proximity to you reduces flinch. You don't reach without consent or hover to harvest attention. You calibrate distance by her comfort, not your appetite. The chemistry that sparks between you does not fizzle into threat. It settles into anticipation. A woman who has learned to brace for the moment, a man turns possession into proof, finds with you no such turn. Desire without danger is rare enough to feel holy. Holiness, tasted, is sought. You make them feel hopeful about men. This cannot be overstated. One clean experience can revise a whole file. You do not carry the debt of strangers, but you do pay forward a kind of credit. That masculine strength can be kind without becoming weak. That masculine pride can be humble without collapsing. That masculine attention can be warm without becoming hungry. Hope feels like weight coming off the chest. Hope feels like the future re-entering the room. Hope is the flavor of you that lingers, and flavors are what cravings remember. Finally, you make them feel more themselves. Not the smaller self they perform on bad days, not the inflated self they borrow on anxious nights, but the truest self, capable, radiant, specific. She leaves your company and writes better, laughs realer, works smarter, rests deeper. She texts a friend with clarity instead of a spiral. She sleeps without bargaining. She wakes with appetite for a day she did not dread. The craving that returns her to you is gratitude rewritten as desire. Gratitude for how she feels around you, desire to keep building a life that feels like that, even when you are not in the room. Hold this power reverently. Refuse to counterfeit it. Protect it from vanity, which would turn the whole symphony into a solo. Use it like a lantern that others can carry in their own hands once lit. Then the craving you evoke will be the clean kind, the kind that makes people stronger, truer, quieter inside, and more alive. And they will keep choosing you. Every time, not because you cast a spell, but because, near you, they become the person they always suspected they could be. Chosen one, the world often mistakes loudness for depth and volatility for life. You learned early that emotion isn't a storm to drown in or a dam to worship for staying dry. It's a river, and a river needs banks. You built those banks in quiet hours when nobody was clapping, breath slowing the chaos in your chest, words chosen carefully, when heat begged you to spend them carelessly. Posture steady while older patterns tried to drag you back to shallow water. The result is not the absence of feeling, it is the reliability of it. Your calm is not cold. It is warm steel, tempered by fire and disciplined by the hand that holds it. You do not apologize for having a heart big enough to host weather. You apologize only when the weather spills on people who didn't cause it. That distinction is the signature of emotional masculinity. You can say, "I'm angry," and the room does not flinch because your voice makes a vow alongside the confession, "I am responsible for what this anger does." You can say, "I'm hurting," and the woman across from you leans closer, not to rescue you from being a man, but to join you in being human, because you've shown her that pain under your care will not turn into punishment. You can say, "I'm joyful," and no one feels small beside it, because your joy knows how to make space at the table. There is a physics to the way you handle feelings in others. You don't interrupt a woman's emotion with a solution disguised as love. You let the current arrive, you stand knee-deep in it, and you listen until the river tells you whether to build a bridge or simply hold a hand. You resist the reflex to fix because you are strong enough to feel. And when help is needed, you move with an economy that proves your empathy wasn't an audition for control. She learns, through repetition rather than speeches, that your masculine heart does not need to dominate a moment to dignify it. Your discipline protects your tenderness from turning into a flood. You train your body so stress has somewhere to burn besides the people you care about. You keep promises with yourself so your confidence has a foundation that no compliment can counterfeit. You rest on purpose so you don't become a man who confuses fatigue with fate. Emotional masculinity is built in small, boring acts that weatherproof a soul. The result is conspicuous in crisis. The child is bleeding, the plan is failing, someone raises a voice, and you become quiet enough to hear the next right sentence. Then you say it, then you do it, then you stay. There is also a poetry to your strength. You do not speak every truth you notice, you speak the ones that build. You do not hide every tear, you let the honorable ones fall when they testify to love. You do not hoard praise, you aim it with accuracy so it grows what deserves to grow. Your fury bows to your principles, your desires report to your values, your ego answers to your mission. This hierarchy is not an accident. It is the architecture of a man who refuses to be piloted by impulses, wearing the costumes of authenticity. You would rather be true than be dramatic. The feminine recognizes this immediately and relaxes because she can trust a compass more than a fireworks show. You know how to hold silence without making it a punishment. The pause between her sentence and your answer is not an empty room. It is the workshop where you choose care over cleverness. You don't make her pay for honesty by becoming remote. You don't reward performance with counterfeit affection. You reward truth with presence. Presence is the currency of emotional adulthood. It is what you spend when explanations would only make the moment about you. So you remain, and the remaining becomes the sermon. I can feel you and not abandon myself. I can feel myself and not abandon you. Your boundaries are invitations, not barricades. You can say no without turning it into a contest, yes without turning it into a contract. The line you draw is clean, not jagged with resentment. This is how you keep love safe from your own extremes. It's how you remain a man she can bring the full range of her weather to. Thunder, sunlight, sudden rain, a fog that won't move. And know that you will not either weaponize it or wither beneath it. You do not need her to be small for you to be tall. You do not need her to be quiet for you to feel heard. You do not need her to be simple for you to be strong. You are emotionally masculine in the way you let repair outrank being right. Apologies arrive from you early, specific, and without a demand for a matching pair. Forgiveness is not a door you guard with a lecture. It is a practice you perform because you refuse to be governed by old injuries. You do not keep score, you keep covenant. The covenant is with the man you promised to be when no one else was around to check. Measured, honest, kind, formidable, available. Women want to be near that kind of weather because it does not flip without warning. And when it storms, the storm cleans. Your example teaches other men quietly. You don't shame them into feeling, you invite them into discipline. You talk about breath and boundaries with the same normal tone you use for barbells and budgets. You take seriously the ancient truth that a man who cannot govern himself will try to govern everyone else. So you govern. Order inside makes beauty outside sustainable. She sees this and calls it attractive, but attraction is just the first word that comes to hand. What she means is that your heart is a place where she can set down what is precious. Without fear, it will be mishandled. That is why she wants to be around you every time, because the whole of her can come, and the whole of you will meet it. And when you fail, and you will, you do not confuse remorse with redemption. You practice the steps you've rehearsed. Name the harm, make amends, adjust the system that produced it, and return to the work of being steady. Emotional masculinity is not a medal you wear. It is a craft you continue. The beauty is not in never breaking. It is in the way you repair. The gold in the seam becomes part of your strength, visible and honest, a map of where you've been and the man you now refuse to stop being. The world taught many women to build architecture around their hearts. Some learned to mortar every vulnerability with competence, so thick no knock could be heard. Others learned to hang art over the cracks and smile with curator's grace while earthquakes continued behind the frame. Walls saved them when warmth didn't. Walls kept the wind out when promises became drafts. You do not arrive with a battering ram. You arrive with weather that makes masonry consider spring. Your first tool is clarity. You say what you mean and you keep what you say small enough to keep. You do not promise forever on a Tuesday afternoon because the sun feels like a choir. You promise Thursday at 6, and then you show up with the coffee the way she likes it. Reliability is the solvent of suspicion. Every kept appointment is a gentle rain at the base of the wall. The stone doesn't fall, it softens. Mortar loosens into soil. Seeds from old hopes, the ones she thought were dead, notice water and begin to think about green. Your second tool is pace. You do not rush the gate and call it passion. You match the speed of trust, which is the only speed that doesn't cause injuries you will both have to nurse later. You do not demand proof of openness on your timetable. You demonstrate safety on realities. When she leans an inch, you do not convert it into a mile. You lean an inch back. Inch by inch is how cathedrals are raised and how wary hearts become rooms with windows again. Patience is not passivity. It is active honoring of a process that, if hurried, breaks the very thing you hope to hold. Your third tool is play. Walls do not come down under interrogations. They come down when laughter rewrites the acoustics. You give her reasons to laugh that don't require cruelty toward herself or anyone else. You let joy be a rope that pulls her weightless for a minute at a time. Where joy is frequent, vigilance gets bored. It decides that maybe it can take a night off. She doesn't notice the absence immediately. She notices that her shoulders are somewhere lower than they were the last decade. You are careful with touch because touch is language. You do not punctuate every moment with hands that make their own arguments. You read the sentence of her body the way a gentleman reads a poem, out loud, only with permission, and always with attention to punctuation. When consent arrives, you honor it as the door it is, not the deed to the house. You step through as a guest invited, not a conqueror collecting. A woman whose walls were built to survive trespass will, in your company, discover the clean pleasure of hospitality. She will make a home of herself again and be proud to open it. You make walls unnecessary by refusing the games that built them. You do not go missing to manufacture longing. You do not flood attention to purchase compliance. You do not turn your wounds into levers. The absence and presence of you make sense. When you are gone, you told her why and when you'd be back. When you are here, you are here. Sanity is seductive. It is also terrifying because it removes excuses that used to comfort. She will test it, not to punish you, but to see if sanity can be trusted. You let the test be a conversation rather than a trial, and you pass by being consistent, not clever. You see her strength without using it as a reason to abdicate. She's built empires with one hand while holding up ceilings with the other, and you admire that. You also refuse to let admiration become laziness. You carry weight because you should, not because she can't. You take initiative because it honors both of you. You tell her, rest, and you mean it because your actions make it possible. Walls do not melt in the presence of admiration alone. They melt in the presence of rest that has finally become safe. You honor her boundaries as if they were your own. When she tells you the room where certain stories live is closed for now, you don't hover in the hallway and sigh loud enough to be heard through the door. You water the plants. You fix the hinge that squeaks. You make that hallway a place worth walking. And you do it without making a show of how patient and noble you are for managing not to kick the door in. In time, the door opens not as a reward for your performance, but as an answer to your ordinary, unfussy stewardship. The body remembers who waited without pouting. It invites that man in. You are not threatened by the guard who patrols the wall. You greet her. You ask what she needs. You don't try to bypass her by charming the heart she protects. You understand that loyal guards are built by disloyal days, and the surest way to earn passage is to give her a better job. You turn sentry into consultant. You let the cautious part of her teach you the map. The respect you pay the wary within her becomes a check cashed by the whole woman later. Gratitude at that scale has its own gravity. You build rituals that replace fortification with connection. A walk after dinner where phones obey silence. A shared calendar that means surprises can be sweet rather than stressful. A phrase the two of you use when emotions run hot that signals a timeout without shame. These small, repeatable acts are scaffolding while new trust cures. One day you both realize the scaffolding is still there, but the structure stands on its own. The walls that once kept life out are now the edges that keep love in. That is the difference governance makes. You also know when a wall must stay. Not every brick is fear, some are wisdom. You can love a woman at the exact distance her healing requires, and the lack of conquest does not bruise your pride. The confidence to stay outside when outside is honorable is the same confidence that will make inside safe when the day comes. She sees this and discovers that the wall is, in your presence, no longer a prison. It is a choice. Choices undo panic. Panic is the architect of most fortresses. With panic gone, architecture returns to design. She designs a life that includes you because life finally feels like hers again. And then there are the days when old alarms sound for no good reason. Memories trip wires that present tense facts cannot cut. You do not use logic like a blade against a ghost. You sit with the alarm until it spends itself, then you show her the open door and the blue sky and the coffee you made the way she taught you, and you ask whether a walk might help the nervous system remember the century we're in. The invitation is not therapeutic theater, it is simple competence. Competence is the natural enemy of unnecessary walls. In its company, brick by brick, fear retires. This is how you make their walls unnecessary, not by telling them to be brave, but by being the kind of man who makes bravery affordable. Not by despising defenses, but by making defenses redundant. Not by demanding trust, but by living in a way that makes trust the most rational option available. And when the wall finally lowers enough to see the landscape it once hid, you do not claim victory and plant flags. You plant a garden. You water it daily. You keep doing the unglamorous work that made openness possible, because you never wanted ruins. You wanted room. She steps into that room and breathes like someone who has remembered her own front door key. Then she looks at you and smiles with the softness of a fortress turned home, and you know, without any speech required, that this is what your strength was for. Chosen one, there is a difference between gravity and glare. The ego glares, bright, hot, demanding to be seen. Spirit carries gravity, quiet, constant, drawing what is scattered into a center that makes sense. You chose gravity. You built it on mornings when you rose before applause existed, on evenings when the only audience for your integrity was the ceiling. Your choices have learned to point in one direction, like iron filings obeying a magnet. This is why feminine women want to be near you every time. They can feel a true north pulsing beneath your gestures, and that compass steadies the weather in their chest. Leading with spirit means you treat power as a loan and people as the reason for the loan. Your decisions are purchased with prayer, with thought, with the humility of asking better questions before you offer bigger answers. You do not confuse certainty with volume. You do not confuse charisma with character. You do not confuse the spotlight with the work light. The first flatters the face, the second lets hands see what to build. In meetings, you make room for the quiet expert. You translate heat into clarity. You give credit like rain so the right fields grow. At home, you take the heavy bag without commentary. You fix the hinge that only groans when everyone else is asleep. You let kindness be a policy rather than a mood. Ego always needs witnesses. Spirit does the right thing even when nobody is taking notes. You lead with questions that open windows. What is the wise thing here? Not just the easy thing. Who is affected if we get this wrong? How can we succeed without making someone else small? Such questions lengthen the horizon. The ego wants a win by Friday. Your spirit wants a legacy still blessing people on some ordinary Tuesday a decade from now. Women feel this timescale instantly. The body knows when a man is racing for trophies or building for grandchildren. One burns bright and vanishes, the other warms a long winter. Your spirit knows how to kneel without shrinking. Kneeling to truth does not lower you, it aligns you. When you are wrong, you say so with a tone that does not bargain for admiration in exchange. When you are right, you refuse to weaponize it. You celebrate others as if their light were an extension of yours, rather than a threat to it. Ego guards the microphone. Spirit hands it to the voice that will serve the room. It's astonishing how attractive that becomes. The sight of a strong man unafraid to lower himself so the whole rises. Feminine women are drawn to that architecture, the way travelers are drawn to well-built bridges. They feel safer crossing. There is liturgy in how you carry days. You keep a Sabbath for your mind, some standing date with stillness where your worth is not measured by output. You train your body so stress cannot tyrannize your tone. You study so your speech has mineral content, not just flavor. You refuse addictions to outrage, to irony, to the cheap high of being right at the expense of being kind. This is spiritual maintenance, not performance. The result is not sainthood, it is sanity. In a culture that monetizes frenzy, your sanity is radical hospitality. People walk into it and remember that dignity can breathe here. Your leadership is textured by restraint. You could dominate a conversation, and sometimes you must, yet mostly you orchestrate. You set a tempo, name the key, bring in the strings, quiet the brass, open a bar for the soloist who has been waiting with a small, necessary melody. When crisis hits, you do not audition for heroism. You assign roles with please and thank you threaded through instructions so competence never has to apologize for being humane. When celebration comes, you widen the circle instead of shrinking it around your name. Ego collects parties, spirit curates belonging. All of this is felt most clearly when you suffer. Wounds reveal governance. In pain, you do not scatter blame like shrapnel. You do not recruit the room to your resentment. You let grief have its rightful clean tears, and you let gratitude appear even there. Gratitude for the ones who stayed, for the lesson that will seed a better harvest, for the chance to practice what you claim when it costs. A woman watching this learns the most important truth about your attraction. It has structural integrity. Beauty that breaks under strain is decoration. Beauty that bears weight is home. Your spirit is also playful. Holiness without humor turns brittle. You make space for laughter that never cheapens, for joy that never requires amnesia. You wink at the universe like an old friend. You treat wonder as a discipline. You remember the names of constellations and the names of the janitors. You know a good soup recipe and the right ratchet size. That mix, the cosmic and the practical, signals a man whose soul has wide windows. The feminine does not shrink in such rooms, it unfurls. To lead with spirit is to befriend invisibility. You are willing to be the anonymous scaffolding behind someone else's triumph. You are willing to leave fingerprints only on the doorknobs you fixed. You are willing to be interrupted by what matters more than your plan. Ego turns interruptions into enemies. Spirit turns them into instructions. Women notice that your eyes do not harden when reality revises the script. They soften into acceptance and then focus into action. Adaptability in a man is not softness, it is sovereignty over panic. And because your spirit is the engine, your no has authority. You refuse what would stain the realm you steward. Gossip that buys connection with someone else's dignity. Shortcuts that mortgage tomorrow for a today that will be forgotten. Appetites that promise relief and deliver hollowness. A clean no protects 1,000 future yeses. The world may resent your refusals in the moment. It will trust you for them in the long run. Trust is attraction's oldest currency. You mint it every day, and women feel wealthy in your company. So you lead, not by being the loudest storm, but by being the river that knows where it is going and refuses to drown what it carries. Your ego serves that river. It does not steer it. This is why they want to be around you again and again. Not because your shadow makes them small, but because your spirit makes their horizon larger, their decisions cleaner, their courage cheaper to purchase. Near you, they remember that life can be governed without being controlled, that love can be strong without being stern, that joy can be deep without being noisy. Near you, gravity wins over glare, and everything finds its place. There are rooms that force performance, and rooms that invite essence. You have become chosen one, a room of the second kind. A living architecture that asks nothing false and arranges everything true. Feminine women step into your presence and feel their edges warm. Their voices come back from wherever they were exiled. Their shoulders remember a slope that isn't bracing. They do not feel inspected, they feel received. They do not feel contained, they feel accompanied. This is not flattery's trick. It is the physics of a healthy container, form that dignifies flow. Your masculinity is the frame that does not compete with the portrait. You hold boundaries the way good timber holds a roof, quietly, load-bearing, with a little give so storms do not snap it. The house of you has windows, honesty for light, humor for air, purpose for heat in winter and shade in summer. It has locks that work, no trespass allowed, and a front door that opens on time, welcome that costs no dignity. Inside such a house, the feminine stops negotiating for permission to be plural. She can be silk and steel, soft petal and stubborn root, laughter like bells and silence like a chapel, all in one afternoon, and never once fear that you will punish her for the weather changing. You are attentive to the small, which is how the small becomes sacred. The way you adjust your stride to her heels so conversation doesn't break. The way you choose a table where her back doesn't face the door if that steadies her. The way you remember that mint unsettles her stomach and cardamom makes her eyes bloom. These are not tricks, they are proofs. They say, I am paying attention without turning you into a project. Projects are improved, persons are honored. Honored, she softens. Softened, she expands. Expansion is the feminine's native state in a safe place. You built one. You do not make femininity a performance report. You never measure her softness by volume, her radiance by address, her worth by how much she agrees with you. You treat her with the respect owed to a force of nature. Learn its rhythms, shape your plans around its tides, cherish the harvest it makes possible, and refuse the arrogance of imagining control. On fierce days, you do not tame her. You stand secure enough to welcome the lioness. On quiet days, you do not demand roar. You cherish the cat at the window. The lesson her body learns beside yours is that she is not a role to be enacted, but a range to be inhabited. You cultivate ritual the way gardeners cultivate shade, on purpose for the long afternoons. A walk that belongs to the two of you where phones are guests who must ask permission. A weekly dinner you cook with the easy competence of a man who thinks kitchens are places of leadership and laughter, not gender auditions. A phrase for calling time out when emotions flood. No shame, just structure, so that repair has a path and the path is short. Rituals reduce the tax on intimacy. Lower taxes free capital. She invests it in presence, which is the currency of femininity at rest.